Hello and welcome to all our viewers to the Cricketnext YouTube channel. A happy new year to all of you, and I hope you all have a memorable 2023. Today, we are bringing to you a very special program, a look back at 2022 from an Indian sporting context and what is in store in 2023. 2022 was a memorable year for Indian sports, and nothing defined the year better than the historic Thomas Cup win in badminton, an achievement which is at par with Indian sports' greatest ever achievements. Neeraj Chopra, the golden boy of Indian sports, had yet another unbelievable year, becoming the first Indian male to win a medal at the World Athletics Championship. Another success story was steeplechaser Avinash Sehgal. The CWG saw two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu finally adding that elusive gold to her cabinet, but it was the women's lawn ball team that exceeded all expectations, clinching an unexpected gold, India's first ever medal in the sport. This year, for the first time, India hosted the Chess Olympiad, and as the year concluded, women's hockey team did its country proud by winning the inaugural FIH Nations Cup. Mirabai Chanu won the silver medal at the World Weightlifting Championship in Bogota, and the BCCI took a landmark decision by announcing pay parity to women's cricketers. From a global perspective, goats of all goats, Roger Federer and Serena Williams bid adieu to tennis, while another great of all time, Lionel Messi, had his crowning glory at the FIFA World Cup. And we will try to discuss a bit of all this in this show. And it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel. First up, Group Editor, Network 18, K. Srinivas Rao. Welcome, sir. And also we have joining us from far and wide, a senior cricket journalist, Ayaz Memon, and a very special guest and somebody who's played badminton at the international level and who has written extensively and very passionately for us on badminton on News 18 this last year, Mr. Sanjay Sharma. Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And I'll kickstart this with the Thomas Cup win. You know, it announced to the world that India had finally arrived on the world stage, and it is ready to take on badminton powers anywhere, anytime. So first up, I'll bring in Sanjay sir here. Sir, you, as I mentioned, you have extensively and very passionately written about badminton on News 18 this past year. Your thoughts on this win and what it meant or what it means for the badminton fraternity heading into 2023.
Well, you can't have a bigger trophy than the Thomas Cup. And
Right.
I do everything passionately when I do something, Ayaz will know. So the Thomas Cup is something that every badminton player thinks of all the time. They would give their few fingers if you want, if they can be in the Thomas Cup winning position. Mind you, we have not done too badly in Thomas Cup. If you see down the ages in 1952 and 1955, we led by Nandu Natekar, we reached the finals of the Thomas Cup wherever it was held, but in the final stages we lost. Then in 1979, when I made my debut in the Thomas Cup, we beat Malaysia, the holders of the cup, and we beat them in Kuala Lumpur. So that is there, and finally these youngsters get us the biggest crown that can be had in badminton, something that we all dreamt of but couldn't find. So in short, it is going to do wonders for Indian badminton in future. Today, there are so many small kids playing badminton, it is unimaginable. And there is so much infrastructure that has changed. So many coaches are going around. So everything bodes well for Indian badminton.
That's true. I mean, it does this. Indian badminton looking ahead, it has a bright future. And Ayaz sir, I'll bring you in here. I mean, very similar to the question that I put across to Sanjay sir. I mean, this is we have seen the hockey team of India, the unbeatable, the era of the 4 decades of dominance there. You had that 83 World Cup win. You had Neeraj Chopra winning a historic gold in 2021. This has to rank, with the best up there, this win.
Oh, undoubtedly. And as Sanjay mentioned, that there have been some outstanding badminton players in the past. Nandu Natekar, Prakash Padukone, Pullela, Gopichand, the whole string of women badminton players as we know. But what we've seen in the last, I would say, last decade, since the time Saina Nehwal came to eminence, there's been almost like an assembly line of badminton players who have not only challenged the Chinese hegemony, but have become world beaters on their own. I think this Thomas Cup win ranks amongst the best that we've had in the arena of sports for from India. You mentioned about the '83 World Cup and you mentioned about Neeraj Chopra's gold medal. Now let's not compare apples and oranges, but it ranks amongst the finest that we have seen. And I think what Sanjay says is right, that there has been humongous interest in badminton ever since Gopi and then Saina and Sindhu, and then there's a whole host of young players coming up. But there's a whole world of youngsters who are taking to this game now. The academies are flush with young talent across India, all wanting to play badminton because for two things. One is that there's a sense of pride in doing well, and there's also an opportunity of a livelihood. And I think this kind of a triumph is going to trigger even far more interest in badminton. Badminton is already the number two sport in my opinion in the country in terms of public appeal and participation after cricket. There is football, there's hockey, but badminton has grown phenomenally, and I see this as a magnificent achievement which is going to take India places in the years to come.
Absolutely, and I'll bring in Srini here as well. In the context of looking at India as a growing sporting nation, which does not only do well in cricket. Again, how integral or how monumental do you think this win in badminton is? In 2022, what India achieved, or what the Thomas Cup win would do for Indian sport, India as a sporting nation.
Well, I'll just quote Ayaz Memon's tweet, which I actually have to repeat today morning. But it was Ayaz's tweet the day we won, the Thomas Cup. I remember that Handle Cricket Wala saying that where would you rate Thomas Cup win? And he said this would be probably as big as the 1975 Hockey World Cup and the 1983 Cricket World Cup. It was that big. I mean, from what Sanjay is saying and what Asa is saying, like it's actually very true. I mean, where else would you rate this? I mean, this is as big as it gets. I've been told a lot of things, in terms of where we stand, in terms of the quality of the tournament, and but look at the history attached to it. Look at of course, the quality attached to it. Of course, where we've come from in terms of a nation playing the sport to where we have graduated today, where we stand today. This is not just getting lucky with a sport. This is like a machinery that is coming a full circle with the sport. And I think what it indicated was just a start of another dream, a long run dream. And I think I'll go by Ayaz's statement when he said that this is as big as the '83 World Cup, and he just said that it's probably the second biggest sport today in terms of the following that it has. So you can just take it forward from there.
Right, absolutely. And again, Sanjay sir, I'll come to you. And the question here is, how much of the growth? I mean, we have seen in the Indian badminton circuit. I mean, there have been times there were just one player from that, in the global stage. Right from a Prakash Padukone or a Pullela Gopichand or a Saina or a Sindhu. Now we are at a stage where we have a solid roster of world beaters, and Lakshya Sen being at the forefront of it. But there is an HS Pranay, there's a Kidambi Srikanth, there is the unbeatable in a way duo of Satvik Sairaj, Ranki Reddy, and Chirag Shetty. All of them top level players now, and they can just forget about the Chinese supremacy or anything you call. I mean, all of them are world beaters at their own right. And how has this changed about? How has this change come about in Indian badminton in these recent years?
Well, as Ayaz was saying, that we always produced some good players in the past. They were all coming down, but it was only used to be one player in that era who could dominate at world level. So we had Nandu Natekar, who was actually unofficially ranked world number 4. Then you had Dinesh Khanna, who was the inaugural AFC champion, the championship being held in Lucknow. Prakash Padukone, 78 gold medal, 78 Commonwealth Games, and 1980 All England Championship. People forget that in 81 Alba World Cup inaugural championship, he beat Hanjian in the finals 15-0, 18-17. So that was the great deception and great control he had over his shuttle over the opponents. And you come down, then there is Gopichand, Jay Modi was somewhere up there, and then a streamlined production has started. And the one person who's done it all on his own is Gopichand. He is by far the best coach you will find if you compare to any other teams, disciplines in India. That man When he opened his academy, he went to the place where he used to play before he entered. Before he said, "Open my academy. If somebody wants to come join us, you're welcome." And the day Saina came in there, within a year or 2 years, she was world 20th ranked. She had that much of confidence because he gave that confidence. He told me once when I was reading his biography that, sir, we cannot jump like monkeys. We cannot be fast like cheetahs. So what the Chinese is doing or the Indonesians is doing is we have to just get into that fitness zone. And apart from that fitness, if you get it, Indians by going in the past are very good stroke makers. So combination of stroke play and power and speed is what the new generation started getting, and it was through Pullela Gopichand that we had got this opportunity.
Absolutely right, sir. And again, I'll keep the question to you. And before I let you go, 2023, I mean, we've talked about Lakshya Sen. You have written extensively about Lakshya Sen. Everybody's talking about Lakshya Sen. But then again, I mean, how does 2023 look like for Team India? There's an India Open, which has a very, very strong lineup there. There's a lot of things that will be there. There's Asian Games also. How do you see India's prospects in 2023?
See,
And can India, do better maybe than what they did in 2022?
2022, Vinith was an outstanding year for Indian badminton. Whichever way you look at it, the singles team led by Lakshya Sen, the men's doubles team with Chirag Shetty and Sai Satvik, you cannot get better players than that. But this is the first time what has happened is that we had a very balanced Thomas Cup squad. We have got Lakshya Sen playing number one because he's ranked higher in the world. At the time when he played Thomas Cup, he was number 10. When you had Roy and then you had Kidambi Srikanth. But these three are all world beaters. They've beaten every player of any hue and substance on the circuit, so they were not afraid. And Sai, Satvik, and Chirag Shetty were coming up very fast. So all we needed was a bit of luck. And I think if you have to compare this win, it should be 1983 World Cup cricket because nobody gave them a ghost of a chance of at reaching the final, actually lifting the trophy. Same here. I played Thomas Cup 1979, 82, 84, 86. 79 was the last time we reached the semi-finals and we got a bronze, and after that there was a famine. But these three singles players and the one doubles player, absolutely top class in the world, not afraid of anybody. So they went in there and they just had to maintain the tempo. So they always had a chance of winning the rallies and winning the games in the Thomas Cup. But look at the way it was won. We beat Indonesia in the finals 3-0. I think for the entire year till the next Thomas Cup comes, they'll be having nightmares. And the biggest contribution that Gopi could have made, Gopi's way of working has made, is that when we used to play on the international circuit, we were very happy to have some Goras, some Europeans in front of the net. And we would be very angry and upset if we saw Chinese, Indonesians, Malaysians, Koreans, because we knew that we were going to lose. But with Gopi that has changed. Now the other side, rest of the world looks at कि draw में मेरा नाम तो कहीं नहीं है. So
Right.
I hope that I'm not beating an Indian because we have proved ourselves. Today in top 50 world rankings, if I'm not mistaken, we've got 9 players. I mean,
Yeah.
where else do you get such a luxury? Now this is as past is concerned 2023. We have to carry this momentum forward. Only problem is that in ladies doubles now, Ashwini Ponappa and a partner, they are on the other side of 30, so I don't know how far they'll be able to continue. But Terisha Ali and Gopi's daughter, Gayatri Gopi, they're coming up very fast. They need to just build up some muscle and they can take on anybody. The heartening thing is that the men's doubles, the way we have played, even the second, third, and fourth, there is there and they are not as good as these people, but not too bad also. They can be groomed, and the Danish coach who has come to teach us doubles, Matthias Bo, also should be credited with the fact that he has done wonders for Indian badminton as far as doubles games are concerned. My only one problem is ladies singles now. With Saina I do not know why she's still continuing to play. Sindhu is become very injury prone. She has not played after the Commonwealth Games last year. So where do we stand in ladies singles? We've got some youngsters coming up, but they are too far away. So that is one thing that something that the BI has to do. And finally, this whole thing means that there should be a good bench strength in all the five events. When you have a bench strength in the five events, then we'll be able to say we have reached world power status.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. And I think that was very nicely summed up by Sanjay sir here. And thank you very much, Sanjay sir, for your time. And again, hopefully 2023 will be a big year for badminton, similar to how it was for 2022. And if they can top it, nothing better than that. Thank you once again, Sanjay sir, for your time. And we'll hopefully will be able to read you more on News 18 here insights as well.
One thing I want to say that Srini is here, so the boss is here. So I hope that I'll be getting more writing chances for News 18.
From an Indian cricket's perspective, 2022 was a year that promised plenty but delivered little. The headlines were dominated by the change of guard at the helm, both the team and the management level, and the trend continues. Expectedly, the Indian men's team played plenty of cricket throughout but produced contrasting results in bilateral and multi team events. While they were more or less dominant on one-on-one exchanges, the propensity to crash and burn in continental or global events remains. Srini, I'll come to you. With your first thought on this. Again, bilateral ties. You saw India fielding two sides simultaneously. There were a lot of talk about bench strength and everything. But then again, when it came to major trophies, that major trophy drought still continues. I mean, what do you make? How do you make sense of what all happened, or how Indian cricket went about in 2022, at least on the field?
Okay, we need. So I have a couple of thoughts here. Number one, I think between 21 and 22, I think if we were to take lessons from whatever has happened, I think there are quite a few lessons for Indian cricket to plan up. Okay. And it starts with the 2021 T20 World Cup, which was at the at a time when 21 was turning into 22. That's where it all began, and 22 going into 23 is again where we stand at the same kind of point where I think the lessons that we need to learn, what probably we were telling ourselves back in 2021, are the same things that we need to remind ourselves once again in 2022. So from that aspect, we don't really kind of see any change from a cricketing standpoint. So I think you need to look at it from two different aspects here. One, cricket, when we speak purely about cricket, the kind of cricket that's been happening on the field and the kind of cricket and the development surrounding it that have been happening off the field. So off the field, yes, there's a lot to look forward to in 2023, and I'll come back to that later as this conversation progresses. But where on-field cricket is concerned, I don't think we have learned much from the way we ended 2021. We still stand on square one, and if we need to move any further, then probably the one thing that we need to bear in mind, and without fail, is that we need to avoid what we have done in 2021 and 2022. That's for sure. Unless we are not, else we are not going anywhere with 2023. Could probably be the same story.
Absolutely, that could probably be the same story. And Ayaz sir, I'll bring you in here, pretty much on the same lines of what I had the question put out to Srini sir. There was a lot of talks. I mean, it's Indian cricket. There's always noise, bad, good or bad. There's always there. But quite a lot of pointers we saw in 2020. There was in a case of muddled selection. I mean, you didn't have a fixed team, despite the fact that you had such a solid bench strength. I mean, there are talks about transition just keep on happening. You also had, I mean, a lot of injuries. I mean, puts a question mark on the NCA and those kind of things as well. Just your thought on all of this Indian cricket. I mean, what went wrong, if at all, or do you think there's some positive there, or what can be taken forward to 2023?
Make the same mistakes going ahead. You asked about 2023. Now, if 2023 has to be different, certainly you can't be doing the things that you did in 2022 and 2021 towards the end, because that didn't bring you the results that you needed. You've had the changes, you had, injuries. So have other teams. They've overcome these injuries. I mean, look at England. They played the World T20 T20 World Cup without Johnny Bairstow, Jason Roy. They were struggling for key players. And who did they have? Ben Stokes was the big gun, obviously. But who else? There were lots of players who actually looked like they might be, part of the rotational scheme which most teams are employing. The formidable teams in Australia look to be Australia and India, much better than England going into that tournament. But look at what England did to win that tournament, especially the way they played against Sri Lanka and then in the final against Pakistan. So they went on steadily evolving and improving. I think those are key words for me. They are very strong situational players. So while there is a certain pattern of play that they've got, which is like total cricket and all-out aggression and whatever else in all three formats, but they are also very situational driven. So the way they played their test matches in Pakistan, baseball as you might call it, but there were times when they chased a score to win. At times they defended not such a formidable score and they defended it successfully. So it just shows that there's a lot more thought going into their cricket rather than depending on, we've got the big guns, we've got a formidable team, we've got all kinds of bench strength, etc. But we are not moving ahead. I think India needs to be a little more pragmatic, if I might use that word. We can't be always patting ourselves on the back and saying, look at us, we are the richest, we are the best, we've got so much of talent, which is all true. But at the end of the day, when you do the tarazu ka talmel and you realize that you've done wonderfully well in bilateral competitions and not well somehow in multi-nation tournaments, whether at the Asian level or and certainly at the world level. Now, how do you bridge that gap? That is the challenge for India going ahead. It may be that you need some changes in personnel, but certainly you need change in the way things are thought through in your game plans, in your tactics, and how you handle crisis situations or situations during a match. I think those to me are crucial elements that they have to sort out. Yes, there's a new
True.
management or team think tank in place, captain and a coach. They have to find their feet. We all knew that, but it's been about a year now. So that can't be any longer a reason for not doing better than what they've done in the past.
Absolutely, sir. And Srini, sir, to bring you in here, to taking the point from what Ayasa said, that I mean, there's a lot of changes that has happened, but again, it's all to ground, square one in a sense. What is it that you think, or you expect in terms of changes that is happening? Because 2022 was all about leading up to the T20 World Cup. Now this year, it's all about leading up to the 2023 ODI World Cup. And briefly, in a sense, what is it what India team has to do or change from a management level? What is it you think can be done here?
Listen, I have very clear thoughts on this. Okay, and I know that I'm going to like kind of get a lot of people to troll me out there when I say these things. But the point is, I think we're too starry-eyed in the way we lead ourselves. And by the way, as a nation and as a fraternity, we have not changed. As an ecosystem, we have not changed. We were like this, we are like this, and we are probably, unless we change ourselves, we're going to continue to be like this. So and I know it may sound cliched, but that's the bottom line. I give an example. I've been saying this in the run up on this very cricketing show. I've said this in the past that I don't think we've gone places with the kind of team that we selected. I was not very convinced with the team that went for the 2021 World Cup. I was not very convinced with the team that went for the 2022 World Cup. And going by what I see, how I see things, I don't think I'm going to be very convinced with the team that'll eventually probably go for the 2023 World Cup either. And I want to say this now. I want to say this now because look at the lack of clarity that exists. We sacked a bunch of selectors, right? Or did we?
Right.
Have we sacked them or have we not sacked them? Have we said that we are appointing a new bunch of selectors or are we not appointing a new bunch of selectors? I have no idea. Some random media report tells me tomorrow, no, Chetan Sharma as chief selector has applied again. Why this disrespect or why this respect out of the way? There are things that I've stopped understanding in Indian cricket. I don't understand them anymore. For example, what is happening to the selection committee? Are we going to appoint a new one? If we are going to appoint a new selection committee, what are those metrics going to be? How are we going to appoint them? Jatin Paranjpe, a cricketer, a corporate guy, a selector himself. He's part of this so-called new cricket advisory committee. And by the way, why I'm saying Jatin's name, Jatin is someone I look up to in terms of how he carries himself and the kind of stuff that he does. I want to know what kind of vision have you come into with when you talk about the cricket advisory committee. What are you planning to get to the ecosystem? What kind of changes? You were a selector in the run-up to the 2021 World Cup, and you've been seeing the 2022 World Cup from the outside. So, what is it exactly? I'm sure you know what the change should be like. You've played the game, you've administered the game, you've selected an 11. If you don't know, then who does? So there are questions galore, and there are no answers in front of me. I'm saying something as simple as that. For the 2023 World Cup, you cannot do much. You are less than a year away from where 2023 World Cup is concerned. You have to go by certain filters and certain metrics that are already in place. Let's say your captain, the kind of coach that you put in place, everything. But you have 2024. Now, now tell me, I've been asking this already for a while now. Is your present coach going to be your national coach for the 2024 World Cup? Have you asked him this? He's got a 2-year contract. Are you going to extend that contract? Are you happy with the performance? Let's say you want to invest long term. Have you asked him whether he wants to stay long term? Whatever it be. And if not, are you going to do anything about it? Which means you're just a year away from your 2024 T20 World Cup. So what are you going to do about it? Have you started planning on it? You don't even have a selection committee in place. So I when I talk about, if I sit down to really talk about this list is not going to end. I don't know where to begin with, and I don't know where I'm going to go with this. So right now, if you ask me to answer your question, honestly, I have no clue, no finger to put on where these guys are coming from, nor where they are going.
No questions. I mean, questions galore and no answers. I think seems to be a pattern with the Indian cricket team. Ayaz sir would concur to that. He's been following that for a long time now. But there have been a few positives as well. I mean, it's not a case that it's all gloomy in Indian cricket circuit. I mean, we talked about the transition phase a bit, and you saw that transition happening. I mean, very recently, a lot of seniors in the T20 format were not looked at. It's a good sign, and you had certain Hardik Pandya taking center stage, after that injury and everything that he had sustained during the Asia Cup that was previous year. So that made a few positives there, and I like to bring in someone who follows the Indian cricket and domestic circuit very closely, and that is Sahil Malhotra to talk about this. I mean, in terms of Pandya as somebody who's looked at as the next linchpin for this Indian team, so to speak. So I'll bring in Sahil here, and Sahil, your thoughts on that? I mean, you've seen Hardik Pandya play, we all seen that. Your thoughts on that? I mean, in these years, you've seen that in the past 2022, what he has done, and is he the right person to go forward? As Srini mentioned, you talk about 23, 24. Is Hardik Pandya probably the guy for you?
I think you just mentioned about the noise which has surrounded Indian cricket for a long time. And I think the only music to that noise was Hardik Pandya's return to cricket in 2022. And the way he led Gujarat Titans and the way he kind of returned from injury, the promise which he showed in the 20 over format. I think this boy is going to be the most important figure in the white ball format going forward because he binds the team together. He brings the three dimensions which are like being talked about for a long time now to the table, and he has age on his side. So it's important how the management and the think tank kind of take care of him because you don't really want him to rush into the test setup as of now. Just take good care of him. Just build the team around him. He has the age on his side. He has that charisma on his side, and I think that fearlessness approach, which was missing for a couple of years now, because we were just carrying some players along, and it was evident in the way we played in the last two T20 World Cups. And you can't really afford to do that because that format kind of demands players to be fearless, to be not insecure about their roles, to have clear-cut thinking in place. And I think Hardik definitely needs to be that central figure around whom you can build a core of 20, 25 players who can dominate world cricket for the next 2 years, because that is required now. You just can't sit on past laurels. You just can't carry the squads along. You need to build a team together. I don't care who the coach is. We don't care who the captain is. We need to find that central figure, much like what Kohli was in the last decade for Test cricket. The way he kind of, just emerged onto the Test scene and kind of changed the way Test cricket was played. Before baseball, there was Virat Kohli who played with the 5-bowler strategy and kind of pressed for results. And I think that is something which Indian cricket needs right now in the white ball format. And no better person than Hardik Pandya to kind of make a central figure and revolve everything around him.
Absolutely, and as sir, I mean, as you can see, Sahil is very passionate when he talks about cricket and other things. I mean, you are nodding your head quite often there when Sahil was speaking. You concur with the same thoughts, like Hardik Pandya is that go-to person there, and also as a side question to here. I mean, Virat Kohli also had a very interesting year. In a way, you may want to look at him as well when you talk about 2023.
Sahil, I liked his turn of phrase and the passion with which he spoke. And obviously, in many ways, I mean, you can, I also wanted to add here about the angst that Srini kind of expressed. And so there is a logic to it. You can't keep doing the same thing the same way and then saying, hey, we're not getting results. That's self-defeating. I think that's the point that Srini was trying to make. That अगर तुमको कुछ करना है, you better wake up. Rub your eyes and see how the world has changed. Otherwise, you'll be like Rip Van Winkle. When the next tournament comes, you wake up and you find the world has changed, but you've remained the same. So I think that's the change which is important. I think also what Sahil mentioned about Hardik Pandya, and he's given him a lot of plaudits. I think the biggest plaudit to Hardik Pandya is, in many ways, he has become responsible for himself and he's shown his ambition. It's not just about expertise. It's also about the way he steadied his own career. Remember, about 2 years back, he was almost lost to Indian cricket. Then he fought injury. He was lost to Indian cricket for reasons outside of cricket and injury. Then he got injured and he's come back, and he's come back far more mature and ambitious, and he's come back as a leader, which we could sense when he was leading Gujarat Titans. So yes, he seems like the most apt choice right now for white ball cricket, certainly for the T20 format going ahead. 2023 World Cup, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But some changes have to be rung in. About the coach, whether he is interested or not, we don't know. These are questions, these are grey areas, these are befuddling questions that, why aren't they being answered? Why isn't there some clear path being shown? I think that's really the distressing part. I would like to add my own thing, and then I'll tie it in with what you asked me about Kohli. That next year is also the World Test Championship,
Yeah.
in which we are now most likely to meet Australia. We don't know unless we lose very badly to Australia 4-0, because what has happened is England wiping out Pakistan has helped us a lot, in the test series. And Pakistan being unable to beat New Zealand in that one test that they've had at home means, see, New Zealand is out, South Africa is virtually out after being routed by Australia. So it's cleared up the path for India. Now, even if you reach there, how good are you? Are you good enough to take on Australia in England? So I think, and there's not been much talk about Test cricket where India is concerned. Since the whole year has been dominated by the World T20, and then next year, what are we going to do? These are important tournaments. What has passed, the T20 World Cup, what's coming up is the ODI World Cup. But hey, the World Test Championship is also important. And if I might say that this is an opportunity for Virat Kohli, if we make it to the final, to kind of reclaim, in a sense, the lost kingdom, because he was the supreme artist, isn't it? Even in the test format, I was personally a little disappointed that he couldn't make runs in Bangladesh. There were two test matches. He could have, this was an opportunity to strike the big scores. He's got 100 in the ODIs there. We lost the ODIs. He had 100 in T20s, which gave him kind of the climb back into eminence. A test big score, a match winning score in tests has eluded him for a long, long time. So I'm hoping that heading into the World Test Championship, and hopefully India being there, fingers crossed, it becomes an opportunity for the likes of Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma. Certainly, I'm just naming these two big guns because they are all in their 30s now, mid 30s, and they don't have, forever to lead India. World Test Championship, if we can win, that's a big achievement. This is what I think, and look at the irony as we speak. England is actually not the number one team in world in T20. It's India by the ICC rankings, but they won the World T20, and they are not anywhere in the picture where Test cricket is concerned. But they won 9 out of their last 10 matches and are redefining how Test cricket is going to be played. So now India has a lot of catching up to do in terms of becoming the preeminent cricketing side in the world. I keep saying this: India is not only the Mecca but also the El Dorado of cricket today in the modern game. But that must be reflected in the results that we get, in the tournaments that we win, and the titles that we get, and that should happen If it happens next year with the World Test Championship and then followed by the ODI Cup, the ODI World Cup, and subsequently 2024 World Cup, then we'll know really how good and strong India is in this sport.
Absolutely, and I'll bring in Srini here on those lines itself. Kohli, interesting year Kohli has had, and we've talked about this. I think Sahil and Ayasar have talked about it. Your thoughts on Kohli has had a very tumultuous 2022. I mean, but even by his own standards, there's been quite a thing that has happened with it. Do you think it's going to be something or some change or something of that sort? I mean, it's Kohli is going to be that kind of a binding factor for this team. Maybe your thoughts on that.
Okay, see, listen. Virat Kohli quitting Test captaincy was Indian cricket's greatest setback in red ball. Okay, there was no bigger setback than that. Yeah, what was the other one that we lost the WTC final? Yeah, fair enough. We lost it. It's a game that we should have won, and we didn't win it in 2021. But other than that, to me, the greatest loss in Test cricket over the last 12 months has been Virat Kohli's exit as red ball captain. I not for once will I question the decision Virat being replaced as white ball captain. Rohit's time had come. Rohit had to take over, but Virat giving it away, red ball captaincy, left a gaping hole in Indian cricket, which I don't think the BCCI nor the selectors have been able to fill, nor are they anywhere close or in sight of finding answers to it. And we've seen the kind of musical chairs that have been placed, that have been in place, in terms of finding an adequate captain. And as far as Virat making the most of what is coming his way, or rather he not being the captain now, well, that's Virat Kohli 2.0 that we have been discussing for the longest time. That's the question that we have been asking ourselves, and we've been asking of Virat in terms of trying to understand how is Virat Kohli the cricketer going to redefine himself, how is Virat Kohli the batsman going to redefine himself. So Virat Kohli giving up captaincy, the primary reason what we were looking at, or the primary difference that we were looking at, that decision making, was Virat the batsman coming back to full form, right? So again, this is purely up to Virat and what he goes on to make of this decision, and whatever has happened and the consequences that follow. But again, Virat the captain in Test cricket bowing out. Well, I'd like to repeat this, and I'll not stop myself from saying this until we find the desired result. That was probably the biggest setback. And for me, losing out on Virat Kohli, the Test captain, was the setback of 2022.
Absolutely. I mean, that was a major setback for sure, as Srini mentioned. Before I shift my focus towards women's cricket, which has again played a major role in 2022 and is going to play an even bigger role in 2023, Sahil, I do want to bring you in here and talk to us and our viewers about, this transition phase that has been happening now. I mean, there's been a plethora of new faces coming in. I mean, you are seeing certain Shubman Gills and Ishan Kishans and Deepak Hudas and Imran Malik's getting more and more opportunities. Sanju Samson remains an enigma. That's a discussion or a debate in itself altogether. But your thoughts on that, and in terms of looking at 2023, what do you make of it, and who do you think are going to be the next big thing? Or these guys are next big things, but who will take that opportunity in 2023?
I think important here as far as these youngsters are concerned, but I think the utmost important thing is to have clarity of thought when we select them. Who are we selecting? What are we selecting them for? For instance, Rituraj Gaikwad was picked in the T20 squad, but that kind of did raise quite a few eyebrows. He was picked on the basis of the Vijayazare Trophy for a T20 format, a format where he has often found himself taking a lot of time up front. So we needed some fire at top of the order, but a name like Prithvi Shaw continues to be missing from the squad sheets. So I think that's very important. We need to define certain players for certain roles and certain formats. We just can't have that approach where everyone is playing everything, because that is not possible with the whole workload management thing coming into play time and again. So we need to clearly identify the players who are going to play a certain format. Say, for instance, Shikhar Dhawan has been dropped. So there's a bright possibility that Ishan Kishan is being groomed as the ODI opener role for what he did against Bangladesh. Then you need to groom someone who could fill in as a replacement if and not he can be injured at any given point. Then you address the T20 format similarly, whether you Whether you pick someone like a Prithvi Shaw, a Yashasvi Jaiswal, people who have been exploiting the power play overs, something which we need at top of the order in that format. So I think clarity of thought is very important. And again, when it comes to Test cricket, you have someone like Abhimanyu Easwaran, who recently scored a big 100 again in the Ranji Trophy when he returned from the tour of Bangladesh. So he has been amongst the runs. Priyank Panchal scored a double 100 yesterday, so he's also amongst the runs. So you need to identify those set of players and kind of groom them. You just can't warm them on the bench now. If you want the transition in the next gen to kick in, you need to take the tough call. And I think was missing from the ODI squad, and I think this is something which we could see in future. More and more senior players phasing out from particular formats. Say, just hypothetically speaking, a senior player moving out from the T20 setup, a junior coming in who has been doing well in the IPL, in the domestic tournaments. So I think clarity of thought is very important, and we need to address it format wise. We just can't address the larger picture without addressing the smaller things. The whole macro picture will take place if we are sorted at the micro level, and micro level will be sorted when we address them format wise, player wise. And just that whole man management thing which was very famous during Ravi Shastri's tenure, I think that needs to return to center stage now. We just can't leave the players at their own disposal. We need to address them, groom them, take care of them, and then everything will fall in place in a couple of years time.
Absolutely. Clarity of thought. That seems to be the question and the solution also for Indian cricket. We'll now shift our focus to women's cricket. And as I mentioned, it's a big year. It's going to be a big year for women's cricket, Indian women's cricket. And it was, in a way, a roller coaster 2022 for the Indian women's team. After disheartening exit in the 50-over World Cup, the team saw major shifts in leadership. The greats like Mithali Raj, Julan Goswami called it quits. Now the team is in hands of young guns who have done spectacularly well in white ball cricket. But the balance in the team is yet to be achieved. And as I mentioned, big things are coming up. And for this, I'll bring in Akash Bishwas, our colleague here, again, somebody who follows women's cricket closely and, in fact, had written an year-ender, beautiful year-ender on that. You can read those year-enders on our Cricketnext channel as well. Welcome, Akash. And again, I mean, I want you to give us a brief and give our viewers a brief of how was 2022 for the Indian women's cricket team, and how is it shaping up for them in 2023?
Well, hello everyone, and very happy New Year to all. So, as Vineet, you rightfully mentioned, it was indeed a roller coaster ride, for Indians women team, because even before, if we see the performance in bilaterals before the ODI World Cup, they had a 1-4, or we say 4-1 drubbing in New Zealand before playing the ODI World Cup there, and then yeah, we won the first game against Pakistan, but when we faced the Sena countries, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, England, the results were again same. We were back to square one. We were at the receiving end. All those sad faces in the Indian dressing room, and another unfortunate exit from such a big tournament. And yet again, that wait for that, ICC trophy extends. Now then we travel to Sri Lanka. There we thrashed them in T20Is. We affect a 3-0 whitewash in ODIs, and then we go to the Commonwealth games. But there again, we had a terrific run throughout the league games. We were too lucky that we closely finished against England. We edged them out and made it to the finals. And but once again, when we were to face Australia, we were thrashed again. And though we settled for a silver, that was the biggest highlight of women's cricket, the Indian women's cricket rather, in this year. But when it comes to facing big guns like Australia, South Africa, England, and Australia, I don't know what happens to this team that has such good talents. And not even that, we went to England, we thrashed them 3-0, and nobody could forget that that dismissal affected by Deepti Sharma to give the perfect farewell gift to Julan Goswami. That was among the controversy, but barring that, that was a satisfactory performance. We could say that we beat them. But when we face a team like Australia at home in Mumbai, you just see the results of that five-match series against Australia. We were thrashed 1-4. I mean, facing such a big win team like Australia, and that too at home, and when the T20 World Cup is just 2 months away, and we are facing them, we are losing 4-1. That's, I mean, I would say that it's quite alarming for a team like India that has, from outside it looks like a perfect blend of youth and experienced players. But what how this team is going to cope in the next 2 months, that has to be seen. It's a fact that we are the Asian champions. We beat England, we beat Sri Lanka, we beat Bangladesh, we beat Pakistan. We emerged as the newest Asian champions. But what happens when we go to the bigger picture, when we go out Asia, what happens to us? These are something, these are the area of concerns that needs to be addressed as we move forward to 2023.
Very nicely summed up there, Akash. And one of the biggest things I think from off the field was the fact that the pay parity thing. And Aya sir, I'll come to you because you do have the cruise to catch, so I'll bring you in for the final comment. How much of a difference is that going to make, or how again monumental was it in terms of BCCI taking that decision, and how is it going to affect the women's cricket and how it is played and how people perceive it and how young players who want to come into the game, how is it going to help them or inspire them in a way?
I think it's a very major decision in terms of it. In a sense, it removes a class system. I mean, there is equality, there's parity. That you're playing the same game against probably similar opponents in the sense that the gender might be different, but Australia versus India, whether men or women, it's a very formidable contest in the cricketing environment of the cricket world. Now, if the pay scale was 1:10, then obviously it's a bit of a dampener when you take the field. Now that has gone, and therefore I think it will trigger off more interest, more, I would imagine, more intensity. But I just want to focus on what Akash mentioned, and this seems to be a bit of a problem even in women's cricket, because we are in the top three. If the top 3 or 4 teams are Australia, England, India, and New Zealand, maybe not in that order all the time, though Australia has been top of the pops for a long while. But we seem to run into a problem when we play Australia or when we reach the final of a tournament. We don't seem to be winning. In that sense, it's pretty, it's kind of similar to what's happening with the men's team. Now, that is something that needs to be licked. And one of the things where women's cricket obviously has been at a bit of a disadvantage, and there needs to be more focus on how, going ahead, is in increasing the talent pool. That is not a problem where men's cricket is concerned. Men's cricket, the talent pool is flush. There are many people. In fact, the problem is of one of plenty. You don't know who to leave out and who to pick. In women's cricket, you're still more or less confined to a grouping of about 20 to 22 or 25 players. That needs to, I think, maybe increase to twice that number so that there are more options available. And therefore, I would imagine that you don't have the same set of players running into the same obstacles and getting the same results. That can be a bit of a you can get into that loop and not emerge from it quickly enough. That loop needs to be broken, and I think that is something that women's cricket, the coaches, the players, the senior pros, and obviously the administration needs to focus on.
Absolutely, sir. I mean, and looking at the 2023 year, I mean, how Indian teams have performed, they in fact did break Australia's unbeaten 21 win record. So good things are happening in that sense. And with that, I'll let you go off, Aya sir. I mean, thank you very much for your time and for your insightful comments as well. And yeah, once you're back from it, we will do this again with free hit and many other videos as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year to you, Akash, and of course Shrini if he's still there. And we'll catch up
To you,
in the
sir.
new year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.
And with that, we are nearing the conclusion of this show and I think Srinivas sir has some technical issues, but we'll carry on. I mean, and one thing that is left for us is, I mean, a look ahead. I mean, and the Indian team is one of the busiest team in international circuit, and they will not rest for a long time. India's first business of order will be to win the Border-Gavaskar series against Australia to confirm their spot in the WTC final, and then they have the ODI World Cup on their radar. India will host the 50 over World Cup, which will make the tournament much more significant. This is the big year for women's cricket. The team will be heading to South Africa, where they play a tri-series against South Africa and West Indies before heading into the showpiece, even the 50-over World Cup there. So, I mean, before I end, both Sahil and Akash, who are left in the stream, I think, in a way, I mean, what is this one thing that you're looking forward to? I mean, yes, we'll run a video of you guys speaking about it, but if you want to, I mean, I'll come to you, Sahil, first. What is that one thing that you're looking forward to the most in 2023? And just to add to that, what is one thing that you think, I mean, you may want to see change in 2023 as well from an Indian cricket perspective?
I think the first thing which I'm really looking forward to for 2023 is the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. Again, I think the kind of form Australia is in right now, and the recent results they have had in Test cricket and the kind of brand they are playing at home and away, I think they are the team to beat and team to watch out for. And for India, it's a very crucial series. They're playing at home, but you don't really know who the players would be, who the openers would be. And fingers crossed for Rishabh Pant to be fit in time for that, because it's going to be a big void to fill if God forbid he's not able to make the squad. But again, it's a very important series in the context of the World Test Championship, where Indian Test team is kind of approaching ahead, and the kind of players we are hoping to see for future. So we've already seen someone like Ajinkya Rahane, Hanuma Vihari just phase out of the setup. So we might as well see a Suryakumar Yadav in the squad for that Border-Gavaskar Trophy. Shubman Gill probably being the hand opening the innings along with Rohit Sharma. So it's going to be an exciting series. And Pujara, Kohli, Shreyas, Surya, Rishabh, Aksar, Ashwin, Jaddu if he's fit, I think India is going to be a good squad, and they'll be up against Australia, who are going to challenge them for every spot available. So good series, and I'm certainly looking forward to that.
Certainly looking forward to that. I'll put that same question to you, Akash, as well. One thing that you're looking forward to, and one thing that you think needs to change in Indian cricket if it has to.
Well, I won't speak about the changes in particular, but I will definitely speak what I wish to see. I wish to see, Indian women's team laying their hands on that ICC trophy, because that is the one thing which is missing in the entire women's cricket setup. They have been toiling hard for that, but it has been years that we are yet to win one. And as I said earlier, in the coming 40-45 days, if they manage to curb that bowling and their problem with the bowling, or that problem which definitely which occurs while facing the foreign countries, so if they can curb that, there is a long way to go for them. That's point number one. And point number two is, as India is now also going to participate in the first ever women's under 19 World Cup, and a young bunch of talents is going to play out there in South Africa, and then women's IPL also falling in place. So I think that's going to be a bright year for women's cricket, because if we compare these IPLs, women's IPL and men IPL, just remember how excited we were when back in 2008 the first edition of IPL came into existence, and from then on, number of players came into the picture. They got opportunities on the international level. So I hope the same with the women's cricket as well. And if it happens, I mean, what we are thinking, and if it happens, then we have a bright future in Indian women's cricket.
Absolutely good things to look forward to. A lot of things to look forward to in 2023. And with that, we have come to this the end of this discussion. Thank you once again, Sahil and Akash, for your time and for insightful discussion as well. I'll let you guys go for now. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vineet.
So that's all from us. Thank you for all the panelists who joined in, and a big thank you for all of you guys who tuned in to watch this program. And a happy new year to you once again. And do subscribe to our channel, do follow us on our social handles. And before I take your leave, here's Cricketnext team's wish list for 2023.
The biggest sporting event in India that excites me the coming year is probably the 2023 FIH Men's Hockey World Cup that is supposed to take place in Bhubaneswar and Rourkela. This makes India the fourth time host, the most out of any country in the world, and India for sure will be chasing another gold medal to emulate their feats from 1975 Malaysian success. India lost out to Netherlands before they could reach the Final Four, the previous edition of the World Cup held in Bhubaneswar. For India's performance at Birmingham during the Commonwealth Games in the year 2022 where they reached the finals before losing out to Australia to pick up a silver medal. They'll surely throw a shot in the arm as India play hosts once again, making a nation the first one to host 2 back-to-back Hockey World Cups.
2023 is a very big year for Indian football. The men's national team will be taking part in the AFC Asian Cup. The tournament was scheduled to be held in China but has since been moved to Qatar. Domestically, I-League champions will for the first time be able to qualify for the next season of the Indian Super League, subject to of course fulfilling licensing criteria.
As we usher in New Year, I wish to see our Indian women's cricket team win a World Cup. Back in 2018, though they lost a big final to England, but they earned immense respect and the fever of women's cricket was all over the country. So just imagine what will happen when they will really win it. The team has some really good talent, but they just need that trophy. So girls, go and get it.
Hello everyone, wish you all a very happy new year. Moving to 2023, I'm really very excited for the ODI World Cup. The last time Team India lifted the trophy was in 2011 when the tournament was in India, and this time as well it's in our country. So it's going to be a fun experience to watch all the top teams of the world here in our country compete against each other, and it's going to be really very exciting tournament this year.
It's a big year for Indian cricket team, 2023 World Cup year, but the only event which I'm looking forward to is the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. A lot is at stake in context of the World Test Championship, and Indian team is likely to undergo a transition after that series. So my event to look forward to is the Border-Gavaskar Trophy against Australia.
My wish list for this year would be a bit bizarre because we have got a 50 over World Cup coming up, and a lot of you would be wishing that India wins the World Cup. Obviously, I too have the same feelings, but I have a bizarre wish list, and that is that I want to see Punjab Kings win their maiden IPL title. Then, if you could see and if we could figure out that which team has been called the Fisaddi of IPL, then it has to be Punjab Kings.
The Indian men's team has suffered a lot in the last couple of years as they failed to get any major silverware in their trophy cabinet. But this time they have a golden opportunity to get their hands on 2 major trophies, and every cricket fan will want India to get them home. So the first thing will be the World Test Championship final, but they have to qualify for the finals by beating Australia in the Border-Gavaskar Trophy, which is going to be a very uphill task for them, as Australian team has been in a great form in recent times. And India lost to New Zealand in the inaugural season of World Test Championship final, and they have to level up their game this time to get past every hurdle and get the trophy home.
My wish list for 2023 is for the women's cricket to take a step in the right direction. Obviously, BCCI's women's IPL is going to get underway, and I believe it's going to have a massive impact on how the game is perceived in India. Obviously, from Indian women's cricket perspective, I hope to see Harmanpreet Kaur lifting the women's World T20 title in South Africa, and I have a feeling that it's going to have a major influence on how on the popularity and the growth of women's cricket, not just in India, but also from the fact that right after that, women's IPL will get underway, and if we look back how men's IPL grew right after the 2007 T20 World Cup when India became the champions, I hope something similar happens to the women's game as well.